The cantina on Kepler Station smelled like metal and old fear. Blue smoke drifted through the air from alien pipes and burning chemicals. In the darkest corner, away from the main crowd, an old Vorthok soldier sat alone at a small table. His name was Zektar, and anyone who looked at him could see he had been through hell and back. Half of Zektar's face was covered in burn scars that never healed right. His left arm ended at the elbow, the metal replacement limb sitting on the table beside an empty glass. 3 of his 4 eyes were cloudy with age and injury. When he moved, his body made soft, clicking sounds from all the mechanical parts that kept him alive. The cantina door slid open with a soft hiss. A young Vorthak walked in, his green skin bright and unmarked by war. His 4 eyes were clear and full of excitement. His name was Crix, and he was Zektar's nephew. The young soldier wore a fresh uniform and carried himself like someone who thought he knew everything about fighting. Crix spotted his uncle in the corner and walked over with quick steps. His voice was loud and happy when he spoke. "Uncle Zektar, I got my assignment today. They are sending me to the human border worlds. Finally, some real action instead of training exercises." Zektar did not look up at first. He stared into his empty glass like it held secrets. When he finally raised his head, his good eye fixed on Crix with an intensity that made the young soldier step back. "Sit down," Zektar said. His voice was rough like broken glass. "Right now," Crix laughed nervously. "Uncle, you should be happy for me. The humans are weak. Our teachers at the academy said they barely have any real military. They fight among themselves all the time. This will be easy duty." Zektar's remaining claw slammed on the table so hard that his glass jumped. Several other aliens in the cantina turned to look, then quickly looked away when they saw who had made the noise. Everyone on Kepler Station knew about Zektar and what had happened to him during the war. "Sit down, now." Each word came out like a threat. Crix sat down quickly, his excitement fading into confusion. He had never seen his uncle like this before. Zektar had always been the fun uncle who told jokes and brought gifts. This was someone different, someone dangerous. Zektar reached across the table with his good arm and grabbed Crix's wrist. His grip was strong enough to hurt. "Tell me what they taught you about humans at your fancy academy." "Well," Crix said, trying to pull his arm free but failing. "They said humans are a young species. They only developed space travel a few hundred years ago. They have no unified government and fight constant wars among themselves. Their technology is primitive compared to ours. Their ships are slow, and their weapons are weak. What else?" Zektar's grip got tighter. "They said humans are emotional and unpredictable. They make poor strategic decisions because they let feelings control them. They have no real military discipline. Most of their forces are just civilians with basic training." Zektar let go of Crix's wrist and leaned back in his chair. He was quiet for a long moment, just staring at his nephew. Then he started to laugh, but it was not a happy sound. It was the kind of laugh that came from someone who had seen too much pain. "Your teachers," Zektar said slowly, "are either fools or liars, maybe both." Crix rubbed his wrist where his uncle had grabbed him. "What do you mean?" "The High Command would not lie to us about enemy capabilities." "The High Command," Zektar said, "tells you what they want you to believe. They do not tell you what really happens when you fight humans. They do not tell you why so many of us come back broken or do not come back at all." The old soldier reached for a bottle that sat on the floor beside his chair. He poured himself another drink with shaking hands. The liquid was green and smelled like acid. "I was like you once," Zektar continued. "Young, excited, ready to bring glory to the Empire. I believed everything they told us about humans. I thought it would be easy." He took a long drink and grimaced as it went down. "I was part of the Third Terran War. You probably read about it in your history books. Official victory for the Vorthok Empire, they said. Strategic objectives achieved, enemy forces defeated." Crix nodded. "Yes, we studied that campaign. It was considered a model operation." Zektar laughed again, that same broken sound. "A model operation. Yes, that is what they call it now. Do you want to know what they do not put in the history books, nephew?" Do you want to know why I have more metal than flesh left in my body? Before Crix could answer, Zektar continued. They do not tell you that we lost more ships in that victory than in any other campaign in Vorthak history. They do not tell you that entire battle groups simply disappeared, never to be heard from again. They do not tell you that, Hardened. Warriors, veterans of a dozen conflicts, came back from human space screaming in their sleep. The young soldier was starting to look uncomfortable. Uncle, maybe you should not talk about classified military operations. Classified? Zektar's voice rose, causing other patrons to look over again. There is nothing classified about fear, boy. There is nothing secret about the truth they do not want you to know. He leaned forward, his scarred face inches from Crix's. Do you want to know what humans are really like? Do you want to know why the High Command quietly moved all our forces away from human space after our victory? Crix found himself nodding, even though part of him wanted to run. Then listen carefully, Zektar said. And maybe, just maybe, you will come back from your assignment with all your original parts. The old soldier finished his drink and set a glass down carefully. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, but somehow more frightening. The first thing you need to understand about humans is that everything you learned about them is wrong. Yes, they fight among themselves, but when an outside threat appears, they unite like nothing you have ever seen. Yes, their technology seems primitive, but they use it in ways that would never occur to a civilized mind. Zektar's good eye stared off into the distance, seeing things that were not there. They do not fight like any other species in the galaxy. When we fight, we follow rules. We have honor codes and strategic doctrines. We fight to win quickly and with minimal losses. Humans do not care about any of that. He turned his attention back to Crix. Humans fight like the universe is ending and they are the only thing standing in the way. They will sacrifice anything. Use any method, break any rule if it gives them even the smallest advantage, and they never, ever give up. The cantina seemed to have gotten quieter around them. Even the background noise of conversations and clinking glasses had faded. I'm going to tell you some stories, Zektar said. Stories about what really happened during the Third Terran War. Stories they do not want young soldiers like you to. Here, maybe if you understand what humans are capable of, you will be smart enough to avoid unnecessary fights with them. Crix swallowed hard. What kind of stories? Zektar smiled, but there was no warmth in it. The kind that will give you nightmares for the rest of your life. The kind that will make you understand why I wake up screaming his name. Whose name? Captain Jake Morrison, Zektar said quietly. A human who taught me that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is not the one with the biggest weapons. Sometimes it is the one who refuses to be afraid. Zektar poured himself another drink and stared at the green liquid for a moment. His nephew Crix sat across from him, waiting. The cantina around them had grown quieter, as if the other aliens could sense that something important was about to be shared. New Detroit, Zektar said finally. That is where I learned my first lesson about humans. That is where I lost my arm and gained my nightmares. He took a sip of his drink and continued. Our fleet commanders told us it would be simple. New Detroit was a mining colony with maybe 50,000 humans. No military base, no orbital defenses. Just miners and their families digging metal out of rock. The plan was to surround the planet, demand surrender, and take control of the mining operations. Crix leaned forward, interested despite his growing unease. And that sounds like a reasonable strategy? Reasonable, Zektar repeated with a bitter laugh. Yes, it was very reasonable. Any other species would have surrendered immediately when they saw our fleet in orbit. We had 12 battle cruisers and enough firepower to turn their planet into glass. They had nothing but old cargo ships and mining equipment. The old soldier's good eye focused on something far away. The first sign that something was wrong came when we sent the surrender demand. Most species send back diplomatic messages. Maybe try to negotiate terms. The humans sent back a single word in our language. They said no. Just no? Crix asked. Just no. Our admiral was confused. He sent another message explaining that resistance was pointless and that we would guarantee the safety of civilians who cooperated. The humans sent back another message. This time it was longer. Zektar drank again and grimaced. They said that if we wanted their planet, we could come down and take it. They said they would be waiting for us. Crick shifted uncomfortably in his seat. That seems foolish. Why fight when you cannot win? That, Zektar said, is the question I asked myself for years after. The Admiral decided to make an example of them. He ordered bombardment of their main settlement to show them what our weapons could do. We expected them to surrender immediately after that. The old veteran paused and touched the scars on his face with his remaining hand. The bombardment destroyed 3 city blocks and killed maybe 1,000 humans. We waited for their surrender. Message? Instead they sent us something else. What? Pictures, Zektar said quietly. Pictures of human children helping to dig through the rubble. Pictures of old humans carrying weapons bigger than they were. Pictures of the bomb craters with signs planted in them that said, "Is that all you have?" Crix felt his stomach turn. They were mocking you? Worse than that. They were telling us that killing their people would not break their spirit. They were telling us that we had just made them angry. Zektar finished his drink and immediately poured another. The Admiral decided that a ground invasion was necessary. We would land troops, secure the mining facilities, and capture the leaders. Simple operation. I was part of the first wave, along with 5,000 other soldiers. The cantina seemed to have grown even quieter. Even the background music had stopped. We landed at dawn, expecting maybe some light resistance from local police or security guards. Instead, we found that every human in the settlement had become a soldier. Every building had been turned into a fortress. Every street had become a trap. Zektar's voice got quieter, but somehow more intense. The man leading their defense was named Jake Morrison. Our intelligence said he was a construction worker before the war started. He had no military training, no combat experience. He should have been easy to defeat, but he was not. Crix asked, though he already knew the answer. Morrison understood something that our commanders did not. He understood that humans do not fight the same way we do. We try to protect our resources and minimize our losses. Humans are willing to destroy everything they have if it means stopping their enemy. The old soldier touched his mechanical arm. Morrison had his people rig explosives throughout the settlement. Not just military targets, but everything. Homes, schools, hospitals, even the mining equipment we wanted to capture. If we tried to take any building by force, they would blow it up rather than let us have it. Crix was starting to understand why his uncle looked so haunted. They were willing to destroy their own colony? They were willing to destroy everything rather than let us control it. But that was just the beginning. Morrison had turned the entire settlement into a weapon aimed at us. Zektar paused to organize his thoughts. There was a woman named Lisa Park. She was a mechanic who worked on the mining equipment. When we tried to capture the repair facility, we found that she had booby-trapped every tool, every spare part, every machine in the building. We lost 20 soldiers to explosions that came from wrenches and power drills. The veteran's hands were shaking slightly as he continued. There was a teacher named Danny Collins. He knew every tunnel and maintenance shaft under the settlement. He would lead groups of human children through these tunnels to plant bombs in our supply depots. Children Crix, human children, were carrying explosives through underground passages to attack our forces. Crix felt sick. They were using their own children as weapons? The children volunteered, Zektar said. That is what made it so terrible. These were not soldiers forced to fight. These were ordinary humans who decided that dying was better than surrendering. The old soldier stared into his glass. We controlled the landing zones and maybe half the main settlement, but we could not control anything else. Every time we secured a building, the humans would tunnel under it and plant explosives. Every time we set up a supply depot, children would sneak through maintenance shafts and destroy it. How long did this go on? Crix asked. 8 months, Zektar said. 8 months of fighting an enemy that refused to follow any logical rules of warfare. They used mining lasers as weapons. They turned their crop-dusting aircraft into bombers. They made explosives out of fertilizer and household chemicals. The veteran took another drink. The worst part was that they kept getting better at it. Every week, Their traps became more clever, their attacks more coordinated. Morrison was learning our tactics and adapting faster than our commanders could change their strategies. "But you won eventually, right?" Crix asked. "The history books say we captured the settlement." Zektar laughed bitterly. "Yes, we captured it. After 8 months of fighting, we finally broke through their defenses and took the main settlement. Do you know what we found?" "What?" "Empty buildings." The humans had spent those 8 months digging a tunnel system that connected to caves in the mountains. While we were fighting for their settlement, they were evacuating their people and supplies. Through underground passages we never even knew existed. Zektar's good eye fixed on his nephew. "We captured a bunch of empty buildings that had been stripped of anything useful. Morrison and his people had melted into the wilderness with all their weapons and knowledge. The settlement we fought so hard to take was worthless. So what happened then?" "Then the real war started," Zektar said. "Morrison turned his entire population into a resistance movement. They attacked our patrols from the mountains, they sabotaged our equipment. They made it impossible for us to use the mining facilities we had supposedly captured." The old soldier touched his scars again. "I lost my arm in one of those attacks. Morrison had trained a group of teenagers to use mining charges as weapons. They collapsed a tunnel while my unit was inside it. Half my squad died in that attack. The other half were crushed or burned." "That is horrible," Crix whispered. "The horrible part was not the attack itself," Zektar said. "The horrible part was what happened afterward. When our rescue teams pulled me out of the rubble, they found a note from Morrison. He apologized for the attack and said he hoped I would survive my injuries. Then he warned us that this was just the beginning." Zektar drained his glass and set it down with shaking hands. "That note was when I realized we were not fighting soldiers. We were fighting an entire species that would rather die than surrender. Morrison was not just a military leader, he was showing other humans how to fight like he did." "Did you ever capture him?" "No," Zektar said quietly. "After 2 years of fighting, the High Command decided that New Detroit was not worth the cost. We withdrew our forces and declared the operation a success. Morrison and his people kept their planet." Crix sat in stunned silence for a moment. "The history books said we won." "We won the right to leave," Zektar said. "That is all, and Morrison became a hero to humans everywhere. Other colonies started copying his tactics. The resistance spread to every human world we tried to occupy." The old veteran looked directly at his nephew. "That is lesson number 1? About humans, boy. They do not fight to win quickly. They fight to make sure their enemy can never feel safe. Morrison taught his people that any price was worth paying to keep their freedom." "What happened to Morrison after the war?" Crix asked. Zektar smiled grimly. "The last I heard, he became the governor of New Detroit. The construction worker with no military training became the leader of an entire world. And every human child on that planet learns his story in school." The cantina had grown completely quiet around them. Even the aliens at other tables had stopped talking to listen to Zektar's story. "That is why I am scared for you, nephew," Zektar said. Zektar reached for the bottle again, but his hand was shaking so badly that he nearly knocked it over. Crix noticed and felt a chill run down his spine. He had never seen his uncle this disturbed before. "The second lesson," Zektar said slowly, "came 6 months after New Detroit. High Command decided they needed human technology to understand why we kept losing. They sent us to capture a research station in the Outer Rim." The old soldier paused and stared at his mechanical arm. "The mission was called Operation Swift Talon. Intelligence said the station had maybe 20 scientists working on quantum computer research. No military personnel, no weapons, just researchers and their equipment." Crix waited quietly as his uncle gathered himself. The plan was simple. Land fast, secure the scientists, download their computers, and leave before any human military could respond. It should have taken maybe 2 hours from start to finish. Zektar finally managed to pour himself another drink. "I was part of an elite strike team, 12 of the best soldiers in the fleet, all veterans of successful operations. We had done this kind of mission dozens of times against other species. It was routine. What went wrong?" Crix asked, though he was beginning to dread the answer. Everything, Zektar said simply. Everything went wrong from the moment we landed. The old veteran took a sip and continued. The station looked normal. From the outside, standard human construction, basic life support systems, nothing threatening. We cut through the outer airlock and entered the main corridor without any resistance. That should have been a good sign, right? With any other species, yes. With humans, you learn that easy things are never easy. The first sign of trouble came when we reached the central hub. There was a man waiting for us. Zektar's good eye focused on the memory. His name was Alex Turner. Our intelligence said he was a physicist who studied particle behavior. Just a scientist. He was sitting at a desk, reading from a datapad like he was expecting us. Was he armed? No weapons that we could see? Turner looked up when we entered and smiled at us. He said, "Welcome to Research Station Omega. I've been waiting for you." Crix felt his stomach turn. "Waiting for you." "Waiting for us," Zektar confirmed. Turner stood up and said that he had spent the last 2 years studying Vorthik military tactics. He said he knew exactly how we would attack his station and when we would come. The old soldier's hands were shaking again. Turner told us that he and his team had turned the entire station into what he called a learning experience. He said they wanted to teach us something important about human ingenuity. What kind of learning experience? Zektar drained half his glass before answering. Turner had rigged the entire station with traps. Not just explosives, but elaborate systems designed to capture and study us. He wanted to learn how Vorthik soldiers think and react under pressure. The veteran touched his scarred face. There was a woman named Maria Santos. She was an environmental engineer who had spent months rerouting the station's life support systems. Every corridor, every room, every passage had been turned into a potential death trap. "Death trap how?" Gas, Zektar said quietly. Santos had filled the ventilation system with different chemicals that were harmless to humans but toxic to our biology. She could flood any part of the station with poison gas just by touching a control panel. Crix was beginning to understand why his uncle looked so haunted. They were trying to kill you. Worse than that. They were trying to study us while they killed us. Turner had cameras everywhere recording our reactions, measuring our vital signs, analyzing how we moved and fought. Zektar paused to organize his thoughts. There was another man named Ryan Bell. Intelligence said he was a computer specialist who maintained their research systems. What they did not tell us was that Bell had spent months hacking their own security systems. Their own systems? Bell had turned the station's security network into a maze. Doors would lock and unlock in patterns designed to separate our team. Elevators would take us to the wrong floors. Even the lighting system had been programmed to create confusion and panic. The old soldier's voice got quieter. We found ourselves split up, lost in a station that should have been simple to navigate. Every time we tried to regroup, the humans would use their systems to drive us apart again. How many scientists were actually there? Crix asked. 12. Zektar said. 12 humans against 12 of our best soldiers. But they had turned their entire workplace into a weapon against us. The veteran took another drink. The worst part came when we finally cornered some of them in the medical bay. There was a woman named Helen Wright who was treating wounded researchers. She was a nurse, not a soldier. What made her so dangerous? Zektar's good eye met his. Nephews. Wright told us that she had injected herself and the other humans with a binary toxin. 2 chemicals that were harmless by themselves but deadly when combined. I do not understand. She said that every 12 hours they needed an antidote to prevent the chemicals from mixing in their blood. If they did not get the antidote, they would die in exactly 30 minutes. Crix felt cold. She poisoned herself. She poisoned all of them, Zektar said. Wright told us that she was the only person who knew where the antidote was hidden. If we killed her or hurt her, the other humans would die. If we tried to force information from her, she would kill herself and let everyone die. The old soldier's hands were shaking badly now. But here is the truly terrifying part. Wright said that she had also given herself a third chemical that would kill her if her heart rate went too high for too long. So we could not even torture her without killing her. So what did you do? What could we do? Zektar asked. We had come to capture scientists and technology. Instead, we found ourselves holding hostages who were effectively time bombs. Every 12 hours, we had to let Wright give them the antidote, or they would all die. The veteran stared into his glass. Turner had planned this perfectly. He knew that our military doctrine requires us to preserve valuable prisoners. He had made himself and his team too valuable to kill, but too dangerous to hold. How long did this go on? 3 days, Zektar said. 3 days of being trapped on a station we could not control, holding prisoners we could not harm, facing an enemy who had made their own lives into weapons against us. Crix was quiet for a moment. How did it end? Turner made us an offer, Zektar said. He said he would give us some of their research data and let us leave safely. In exchange, we had to agree to never attack a human research station again. You agreed? Our captain agreed, Zektar said bitterly. What choice did we have? We were trapped in a maze designed by Bell, breathing air controlled by Santos, holding hostages poisoned by Wright. All while, Turner recorded every detail of our humiliation. The old soldier finished his drink. Turner kept his word. He gave us some basic research data and showed us how to leave the station safely. But he also gave us something else. What? A message for High Command? Turner said that every human research facility in the galaxy had received copies of his station's design. He said that any future attacks on human scientists would result in the same kind of learning experience. Zektar's good eye fixed on his nephew. That was when I realized that humans do not just fight with weapons. They fight with their minds. Turner had turned his own workplace into a trap specifically designed to capture and study Vorthok soldiers. What happened to Turner and his team after you left? Turner became the head of human military research, Zektar said. Wright was promoted to chief medical officer of their defense forces. Bell designed security systems for human military bases. Santos became an expert in environmental warfare. The old veteran leaned back in his chair. They went back to their normal jobs, but now they were using everything they had learned from us to make human defenses even stronger. Did High Command ever attack another research station? Never, Zektar said quietly. After our report, they classified all human research facilities as too dangerous to approach. Turner had taught us that human scientists could be just as deadly as their soldiers. Crix sat in stunned silence for a moment. So they won without firing a shot? They won by making us too afraid to try again, Zektar said. That is lesson number 2 about humans, nephew. They do not just defend themselves. They study their enemies and learn how to make them defeat themselves. The cantina around them had grown completely silent. Every alien in the place was listening to Zektar's story with fascination and horror. Turner taught me that humans see every encounter as a chance to learn something new, Zektar continued. They do not just want to survive. They want to understand their enemies well enough to never be threatened by them again. Is that why you are telling me these stories? Crix asked. I'm telling you these stories, Zektar said, because somewhere in human space there are more people like Turner waiting for young soldiers like you, and they have had years to perfect their methods. Zektar's voice dropped to almost a whisper. The cantina around them had become so quiet that even the air recycling system seemed loud. His nephew Crix leaned forward, afraid to miss any words. The third lesson, Zektar said, was the worst. 1. It happened near the edge of the galaxy, far from any human worlds. That is where I learned that humans can turn even death itself into a weapon. The old soldier's remaining hand trembled as he reached for his glass. This time he did not drink, just held it like he needed something solid to grip. My ship was on patrol duty. We were looking for human vessels that might be carrying supplies to rebel colonies. It was supposed to be safe duty, far from any fighting. Just routine patrols in empty space. Crix noticed that his uncle's good eye had a haunted look that had not been there before. What did you find out there? We found the USV Liberty Bell, Zektar said. A human deep space exploration ship. It was drifting without power, no communications, no signs of life. Our sensors showed maybe 2 or 3 humans still alive inside. The old veteran finally took a small sip from his glass. Our captain was excited. Human exploration ships carried advanced navigation equipment and star charts. It looked like easy salvage. That should have been good luck, Crick said. Nothing involving humans is ever good luck, Zektar replied. But we did not know that. Yet the ship looked completely disabled. No engines, no weapons, no shields. Our scans showed that most of the crew was dead. Zektar paused and touched his scarred face. The captain ordered a boarding operation. I was part of the team that went across. We cut through their airlock and entered the ship. What did you find inside? Bodies, Zektar said quietly. Human. Bodies everywhere. They looked like they had died from some kind of plague. Most of them were at their duty stations, like they had died while working. The old soldier's voice got even quieter. There were only 2 humans left alive. They were sealed in the engine room, wearing protective suits. A man named Pete Davis and a woman named Amy Chun. Were they the survivors? That is what they wanted. You has to think, Zektar said. Davis said he was the chief engineer. Chun said she was the communications officer. They claimed they were trying to contain the plague outbreak and begged us for medical help. Crix felt a chill. They were lying? They were lying about everything, Zektar confirmed. But we did not know that at first. Davis and Chun seemed terrified and grateful for rescue. They showed us medical logs that described how the plague had killed their crew over several weeks. The veteran stared into his glass. The logs were very detailed. They described exactly how the disease worked, how fast it spread, how it affected different crew members. It seemed like good intelligence about human biology. But something was wrong? Everything was wrong, Zektar said. The bodies were positioned too perfectly. Their equipment was too easy to access. The medical logs contained information that seemed designed specifically for Vorthik biology. Zektar's good eye fixed on his nephew. There was also a woman named Linda Hayes in the medical bay. She appeared to be dead, but her body was positioned like she had died while recording final logs about the plague. What made that suspicious? Hayes had died with a datapad in her hands, showing detailed notes about how the plague might affect alien species that breathed different gases or had different blood chemistry. It was like she had spent her final moments thinking about how to help potential alien rescuers. The old soldier took another small sip. That should have been our first warning. No human scientist would spend her dying moments helping potential enemies. What happened next? Members of our boarding team started getting sick, Zektar said. At first, it seemed like the same plague that killed the human crew. Fever, weakness, difficulty breathing. Our medic said it was probably a cross-species. Infection? Zektar's hands were shaking again. But then Davis made a mistake. He asked too many questions about our symptoms. He wanted to know exactly how the disease was affecting us, how fast it was progressing, what our medics were doing to treat it. He was studying you. He was collecting data, Zektar said. Davis was not an engineer at all. He was a biowarfare specialist who had spent years developing diseases that could affect Vorthek physiology. The veteran's voice became barely audible. Chun was not a communications officer either. She was a tactical expert who had studied our boarding procedures for months. They knew exactly how we would respond to a disabled ship with plague victims. Crix felt sick. The whole thing was a trap? The entire ship was a weapon, Zektar said. There was no plague outbreak. The dead crew members were in suspended animation, protected by drugs that made them appear dead. Hayes was not dead at all. She was monitoring our vital signs and adjusting the bioweapon based on our reactions. The old soldier finished his drink in one gulp. Davis revealed the truth when our team members started dying. He said the Liberty Bell was a Trojan horse designed to get close to Vorthak ships and deliver a biological weapon. How many of your people died? 8 out of 12, Zektar said quietly. The bioweapon was designed to kill slowly, so Davis and his team could study how it affected us. They wanted to perfect it for use against other Vorthak ships. Crix was horrified. They sacrificed their own lives to kill your team? That is what made it so terrifying, Zektar said. Davis told us that he and Chun had also been infected with the bioweapon, They were going to die along with us. But they considered it a worthy sacrifice if it meant protecting other human ships from Vorthik boarding operations. The veteran stared at his empty glass. Davis said that dozens of human ships had been modified the same way. Any Vorthak force that tried to board a human vessel would face the same kind of biological trap. So they were all willing to die to stop you? Worse than that, Zektar said. They were willing to die to teach us that boarding human ships was too dangerous to attempt. Davis wanted other Vorthak captains to hear about what happened to us. The old soldier called for another bottle from the bartender. Hayes finally got up from her fake death pose and explained the real purpose of their mission. She said they were not just trying to kill us. They were trying to make us afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid of any human ship that seemed disabled or helpless? Zektar said. Hayes said that from now on, every time we saw a human vessel in distress, we would wonder if it was another Liberty Bell. Zektar poured himself a fresh drink with shaking hands. She was right. After that mission, Vorthok ships started avoiding human vessels entirely. Even obviously damaged ships were left alone because no one wanted to risk another bioweapon trap. Did Davis and Chun actually die? Yes, Zektar said simply. They died 6 hours after revealing the truth. Hayes died 2 hours after that. But before they died, they transmitted detailed reports about our biology and our boarding procedures to Human Military Command. The veteran took a long drink. So even in death, they accomplished their mission. They killed most of our boarding team, gathered intelligence about our species, and made sure that future Vorthik forces would be too afraid to board human ships. How did you survive? Our medics managed to develop a partial treatment using equipment from our ship, Zektar said. But the bioweapon left me with permanent damage to my respiratory system and nervous system. That is why my hands shake and why I have trouble breathing. Crick sat in stunned silence for a moment. They turned their own deaths into weapons. That is lesson number 3 about humans, Zektar said. They do not just fight with their lives. They fight with their deaths. Davis and his team taught us that even helping humans could be a trap. The cantina around them was completely silent now. Every alien in the place was staring at Zektar with expressions of horror and fascination. What happened to the Liberty Bell? Crix asked. High Command ordered it destroyed, Zektar said. But not before our scientists spent months studying the bioweapon and the suspended animation technology. They wanted to understand how humans had developed such advanced biological warfare capabilities. Did they learn anything useful? They learned that humans had been preparing for biological warfare against multiple alien species for years, Zektar said. The Liberty Bell was just one of many weapons designed specifically to target non-human biology. The old soldier looked directly at his nephew. Hayes left us a final message before she died. She said that every human exploration ship, every research vessel, every cargo hauler in their fleet had been equipped with similar weapons. All of them? All of them, Zektar confirmed. She said that humans had decided that if they were going to explore the galaxy, they needed to be prepared to defend themselves against any species they might encounter. Crix felt a chill run down his spine. So every human ship is potentially a weapon? Every human ship is definitely a weapon, Zektar said. That is what Davis taught us. Humans do not build anything that cannot be turned into a weapon if necessary. The old veteran leaned back in his chair. After the Liberty Bell incident, High Command issued orders that no Vorthik ship should approach any human vessel under any circumstances. Better to let them go than risk another biological warfare trap. Did that work? It worked perfectly, Zektar said grimly. Davis and his team had achieved exactly what they wanted. Zektar set down his empty glass and stared at it for a long moment. The cantina around them was still completely silent. Every alien in the place had been listening to his stories, and now they all seemed afraid to make any noise. Crick sat across from his uncle, his face pale with shock. The young soldier's excitement about his deployment had completely disappeared. In its place was a deep fear of what he might face in human space. Those are my 3 lessons about humans, Zektar said finally. Morrison taught me that humans will sacrifice everything to keep their freedom. Turner taught me that humans can turn any situation into an advantage. Davis taught me that humans can make even death itself into a weapon. The old veteran reached into his coat and pulled out a data pad. He placed it on the table between them. Now, let me show you something else, nephew. Something that will help you understand why these stories matter. Crix looked at the data pad nervously. What is that? Your deployment orders, Zektar said. I had a friend in military command send me a copy. Do you want to know where they are really sending you? The young soldier picked up the data pad with trembling hands. He read the orders once, then read them again, his eyes growing wider with each word. This says I am being assigned to a diplomatic mission, Crix said in confusion. Not a military operation? I am supposed to help negotiate trade agreements with human colonies. That is correct, Zektar said. You are not being sent to fight humans. You are being sent to make friends with them. Crix stared at his uncle in confusion. But the Academy said we were at war with them. They said humans were enemies of the Empire. Zektar laughed, but this time it was not the bitter sound from before. This laugh had real humor in it. The Academy teaches young soldiers what they need to hear to make them brave. But High Command has learned the real truth about humans. What truth? That humans are too dangerous to fight and too valuable to ignore, Zektar said. After the Third Terran War, our leaders realized something important. Fighting humans costs more than it gains. The old soldier leaned forward. Do you remember what I told you about New Detroit? We officially won that battle, but it took 2 years and cost us more ships and soldiers than any other campaign in Vorthak history. Crix nodded slowly. The same thing happened on every world we tried to conquer, Zektar continued. Humans would turn entire planets into weapons against us. Every victory cost us so much that it felt like defeat. Zektar tapped the data pad. High Command realized that it was cheaper and safer to trade with humans than to fight them. Humans have resources we need, and they are willing to trade for things we can provide. So the war is over? Crix asked. The war never officially ended, Zektar said, but it quietly stopped. Both sides realized that fighting was not worth the cost. Now we send diplomats instead of soldiers to human space. The veteran poured himself another drink, but this time his hands were steady. There is something else you need to understand. About humans, all those people I told you about in my stories. Morrison, Turner, Davis, and the others. What about them? They went back to their normal lives after the war, Zektar said. Morrison became the governor of New Detroit. Turner runs human military research. Davis was posthumously honored as a hero. But they are all still there, still protecting human space. Crix felt a chill. You mean they are still active? I mean that every human colony has people like them, Zektar said. Construction workers who can organize resistance movements. Scientists who can turn research stations into traps. Engineers who can make ships into weapons. They are all just doing normal jobs, but they are always ready to fight if they need to. The old soldier's good eye fixed on his nephew. That is the real lesson about humans. They do not have a separate warrior class like we do. Every human is a potential soldier. Every human settlement is a potential fortress. Every human ship is a potential weapon. That is terrifying, Crix whispered. It is terrifying, Zektar. Agreed, but it is also why we stopped fighting them. High Command realized that humans could turn their entire civilization into a military force if they needed to. Zektar drank and continued. There are billions of humans spread across hundreds of worlds. If we tried to conquer them all, we would face billions of Morrisons and Turners and Davises. The cost would destroy our empire. So what changed their minds about negotiating? Humans offered us something better than conquest, Zektar said. They offered us partnership. Human technology, human resources, human knowledge, all available through trade instead of war. The veteran smiled slightly. It turns out that humans are very good at making things we need. Their ships are fast, their computers are advanced, their medical technology is excellent. Why fight them for these things when we can trade for them? Crix looked at his deployment orders again. So I will be working with them, not fighting them. You will be working with them, Zektar confirmed. And if you are smart, you will remember everything I have told you tonight. What do you mean? I mean that the humans you meet will seem friendly and helpful, Zektar said. They will smile and shake your hand and offer you food and drinks. But remember that these same humans could turn into Morrison or Turner or Davis if they felt threatened. The old soldier leaned back in his chair. Humans are peaceful when they feel safe, but they become incredibly dangerous when they feel threatened. Your job is to make sure they always feel safe around you. How do I do that? By treating them with respect, Zektar said. By keeping your agreements with them. By never making them think that you might be a threat to their families or their freedom. Zektar tapped the table with his remaining claw. High Command learned that humans respond much better to friendship than to fear. A human who trusts you will work harder and fight better than a human who fears you. So they want to be our allies? Some of them do, Zektar said. Others just want to be left alone. But all of them want to be treated fairly. They have long memories, nephew. They remember every broken promise, every betrayal, every act of cruelty. The veteran finished his drink. But they also remember every act of kindness, every kept promise, every sign of respect. Humans can be your greatest allies if you treat them right. Crix was quiet for a moment, processing everything his uncle had told him. Why are you telling me all this? Why not just let me learn it for myself? Zektar's expression became serious. Again, because I do not want you to make the same mistakes we made during the war. I do not want you to underestimate humans or to accidentally threaten them. What kind of mistakes? The kind that turn friendly humans into enemies, Zektar said. Morrison was just a construction worker until we attacked his planet. Turner was just a scientist until we tried to steal his research. Davis was just an engineer until we started boarding human ships. The old soldier's good eye met his nephew's. All of those humans became weapons because we threatened them. Your job is to make sure that never happens again. So how do I work with them safely? Listen to them, Zektar said. Respect their customs, keep your promises, never threaten their families or their freedom. And always remember that the friendly human diplomat you are talking to could become the next Morrison if you give them reason to fight. Zektar stood up slowly, his mechanical parts clicking and whirring. Humans have a saying, walk softly. And carry a big stick. It means to be polite and peaceful, but always be ready to fight if necessary. That sounds like good advice. It is excellent advice, Zektar said. Humans follow it every day. They are polite and friendly in their daily lives, but they are always ready to become warriors if they need to protect what they love. The old veteran put his hand on Crix's shoulder. Your mission is to help build a lasting peace between our species. That peace depends on mutual respect and trust. Never forget that humans earned that respect with the blood of warriors like Morrison and Turner and Davis. I will remember, Crix promised. Good, Zektar said. And remember one more thing. When you come back from your deployment, you will have your own stories to tell. Make sure they are stories about friendship and cooperation, not war and fear. The old soldier turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and nephew? When you meet humans, do not tell them that you learned about their warriors from a broken old veteran in a cantina. They prefer to think of Morrison and the others as ordinary people who did extraordinary things when they had to. Are they not? Warriors? Zektar smiled one last time. That is the most terrifying thing about humans. To them, Morrison and Turner and Davis were just ordinary people doing what needed to be done. They do not think of themselves as warriors at all. They think of themselves as people protecting their families. And that makes them more dangerous? That makes them unstoppable, Zektar said. Because every human you meet could be the next Morrison if you give them reason to fight. Every human is someone's family, and humans will do anything to protect their families. The old veteran walked away, his mechanical parts clicking with each step. Crix sat alone at the table, staring at his deployment orders and thinking about everything his uncle had told him. Around the cantina, other aliens slowly began talking again, but their conversations were quieter than before. Everyone had learned something important about humans that night. and none of them would forget it.